stuff.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video where today we will be reviewing the movie Dunkirk, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Good.
Oh, me, sorry. Yeah, I thought it was a very good movie too, and well, obviously, there's a fair amount to talk about. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about historical inaccuracy. That's more his forte than mine, but and because I'm the movie geek here, I'm going to mention stuff like cinematography and editing and stuff like that as well. But maybe we should talk about the plot first here. How about you handle that?
Yeah. Um. So, if you can't already infer from the movie title, if you know anything about important events in World War II, it is about the evacuation of Dunkirk, which, spoilers. I mean, it's a historical movie, um, so you already
Yes,
know what's going to happen.
things.
But
Sorry.
like, which for one, I do want to point out like one thing that at least I've thought about before is that when you do historical movies, a lot of the time it's really hard to make it like more interesting because a lot of the people that would want to watch it generally already know about the event, so they already know what's going to happen, or they have at least an idea of it. So it's harder to make it more interesting for sometimes, um, because they already know what's going to happen. And I just thought they did a great job with like filling it in with the more human touch and stuff like that. But getting back on track, I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, the evacuation of Dunkirk. It had British and French troops that were combined. They were fighting to hold the port of Dunkirk, and they were losing the fight to hold it. So their perimeter was just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because the Germans just kept pushing them back. And so the movie starts out where they're on the piers and stuff, and like they're just talking and stuff, and they're trying to get the wounded onto the ships, and then um, well, the ship gets hit after some
Yeah.
guys are forced off the ship. But anyway, the gist of it is they're under heavy fire. There's a lot of like the movie directors added in a lot of um, personal, like they added a more human touch to it. They put you kind of right in the action rather than kind of leaving you above it like some movies do. So for
Mhm.
people that are really big into human interaction, like they're really into the social aspect of history, that would be absolutely perfect for them. Me, I'm not as much into the social aspect of it, but even still, I still thought they did an amazing job of it. Like they really
Mhm.
balanced out all the different kind of demographics that would be watching it. But anyway, I mean, what happened at Dunkirk historically and in the movie, um, they were trapped by the Germans trying to escape, and they eventually escaped with quite a few, many more people than they had originally or ever hoped, much less anticipated, to return. And it was an overwhelming success of an evacuation. But it was still an evacuation, so I personally don't consider an evacuation to be a success. But as far as evacuations go, it was an overwhelming success.
Yeah.
And at one point in the movie, they actually mention um, they're actually talking about how all the German forces just stopped, and they're like just looking at each other, like shrugging their shoulders. And they're like, why? And historically, it's because Hitler specifically ordered all of his forces to just halt. And I have no idea why. And everything I've looked into it about, no one else that I've looked into it about has been able to figure it out. It's just one of those inexplicable things that he put himself in. I don't. But anyway, I'll let you talk some now.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and it was cool to hear about because guys, we haven't talked about our thoughts on the movie at all, and I figured that would be a good idea for us to actually like just give our thoughts in the video, and actually have a conversation about it. But yeah, so I was interested to hear your thoughts on like how historically accurate the movie is. So it sounds like it was fairly accurate, right?
Yeah, it was very historically accurate. I mean, now of course I cannot give my thoughts on the historical accuracy of the interpersonal and on the like intrapersonal level.
Like the main characters in the movie, you don't know if they're real people. Is that what you're saying?
Like the main characters, I don't really know I don't really know if they're real. They may or may not have been added in. The directors may have found like some sort of journals or something detailing all of that, or most of it, which would be awesome if they did. They definitely get points in that for my book. In my book, if they did find journals and put it in there to make the story. But if not, I mean, that's fine. They did a good job with everything else, which is really what it's about, not so much about personal aspect of it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, as the main characters, I wouldn't be surprised if they took like multiple different real life people and just like mixed them into one person for individual characters, because that's pretty common. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were like these different things that happened to these different people at Dunkirk, and they just mixed it together to make it a complete cinematic experience to where you're with these characters the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it was an incredibly well made film. It's really really intense. Like, I saw this movie in IMAX, and I was only a few rows back from the front of the theater. And I haven't been to an IMAX movie in a long time. I mean, like, probably 2011 when I saw, like, Transformers 3 was the last time I saw an IMAX movie. Rest assured, this is better than that one. But yeah, I didn't even know it was IMAX going in. So not only, I was like, holy crap, this theater screen is huge, which is really cool. Christopher Nolan loves his IMAX movies. Like he shoots his movies, or at least certain scenes from them, for IMAX specifically. So it was really cool to actually see the Christopher Nolan movie the way it's meant to be seen. And yeah, like this, the sound system was so good, and especially because I was only a few rows back from the front. The movie is, pardon my French, fucking loud, man. It's really loud. And like, it really startled me. Like whenever shots got fired, I was like, oh shit, fairly frequently. It's a pretty startling movie, and it's what you said about like like the personal aspect of the film. Like, yeah, I'd agree with that. Like the movie is very immersive. It you're in for the ride with these characters.
Yeah.
And it's very intense film. In regards to problems with the film, I mean, the thing is I'm certainly not the first person to bring this up, but like, while the acting was really good, the characters in the movie technically don't get that much development. Like, you don't find out about their backstories and stuff. Now, that wasn't much of a problem because the acting was really good, and like, you get to know these people in the moment, like as stuff is happening to them. So by the end of the movie, you get a feel for their personality. You kind of understand who they are. Kind of like in a movie a very different movie, kind of like in Star Wars Rogue One, how the characters, you don't really find much about most of their backstories. But as the film progresses, they have a decent amount of banter. You still get an idea of who they are as people. So I thought the characters were well done in that movie, even though they didn't have intricately laid out backstories. And it's the same here. But even so, I mean, you get like even less character development in this than you would have gotten in Rogue One. Like, there's not very much dialogue in this movie. But still, like, and I was thinking, like, 2/3 of the way into the movie, I was thinking it was really well made, and technically it's a great movie. I don't deny that this is a terrific film, but for my personal enjoyment, I just think it's like really good. And that's mainly because I couldn't quite latch onto the characters like I could in past Christopher Nolan movies. And maybe it's not entirely fair to just compare it to past Christopher Nolan movies. I mean, just let this movie stand on its own. But overall, still, the characters, like, considering that they don't have much of a backstory, they were still well done for what they were able to accomplish. but and it also worked for the style of the film. This is just a straight war film, a survival film. Again, it's a very immersive film. It just takes you along for the ride. It's really about that intense experience, and you can encounter like the realism of it all. Because I mean, at least as far as I could tell, it was a relatively grounded in reality, realistic movie.
Yeah.
But still, the characters, I couldn't latch onto them that much, so that's why I wouldn't say that I quite loved the movie, but I still really liked it. You know.
Yeah.
Anything to respond there? What do you think about how the characters were done?
I mean, as far as the characters were done, they're interpersonal and intrapersonal. And there wasn't a whole lot of intrapersonal because I mean, the movie's not an omnipotent. You don't really know what's going on specifically inside the characters' heads, except by the way they act and what they say and all that stuff.
Right.
Which is fine. That kind of gives you a sense of what like actual on a personal level. If you were to take that feeling of not really knowing and then take it up to more of a tactical and then strategic level, then you start to get a little. Then you get to start to get a feel for what it's like dealing in war.
Yeah.
Just how many unknowns there are. Which, if that's what they were going for, I think they did a jam up job of just making it where you just don't know. But there are some stuff like the generic, like the generally cultural stuff, which you can just know from, like, I mean, like the Germans and the British, they act two different ways. They're two different peoples with two different histories and cultures and all the stuff that stem from that.
Sure.
So, I don't know. I was, I had a thought, and then it's like, wait, where it started
That's fine.
out.
Happy
But
uh,
where was I? I was.
you're talking about the interpersonality of the characters and how the film it doesn't really lay out their backstories a whole lot, but it's a little bit more realistic in that way. The movie's not just going out of the way to give you character developments and backstory. It's just showing these people as they are in the moment. I think that's kind of where you're going with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, basically,
I do agree.
What you just said. It's pretty much what I was going for. Is just because you don't know as much about the characters, you don't know their entire backstory. I think it makes as you said, it makes you feel a lot more immersed in the movie.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, and it also allows you to. It also just does not like I said earlier. It's hard to make it feel like there's an unknown in historical movies because it's historical, so you already kind of know what's going to happen. And I think by making you more immersed and leaving stuff open as to the history and stuff of the characters, I think that makes you feel even more immersed. So
that's an interesting point. Yeah, I can see what you mean.
It's more of a subconscious kind of thing, more than actually something you'd be thinking about. And I always like when movies try to, well, I can't say I always like when movies try to do subconscious things like that. And I don't know if they did it consciously or not, but I'm assuming they did.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of really talented people making this movie. Not least of which Christopher Nolan, the guy who directed it. I mean, incredibly talented director, and he's good at subtext and things like that, I think. But yeah, so just one more thing about the characters. The fact that they didn't give intricately laid out backstories for each of the characters in the movie, especially Tom Hardy's character, that one pilot, you don't really get to know him at all. Even so, his performance was really good, and so I really wanted him to get out of the terrible situations that he kept getting in. But I do concede that there are many ways in which the fact that the characters aren't explicitly given intricate backstories, there are a lot of ways to where that does work for the film. But it's just for my personal enjoyment. It because I couldn't latch onto the characters that much, it kept me from quite loving the movie. But that's just me. I still acknowledge that it is a great movie, technically.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, having the backstory and latching onto the characters is not really as it's not as important to me as it is to a lot of people. Um,
Sure.
and especially in this movie, partially because, or well, mostly because it is a historical movie, and it's for me what I see in it. The point of it is to show off the history and show what it's like to be there, rather
Yeah.
than to go into a rather than to try and turn it into a drama, which I think they
Like Pearl
found.
Harbor, where they create
Uh,
fake Pearl Harbor, it's where they create fake characters to try to add drama to it all, even though there's plenty of drama to be had because it's freaking Pearl Harbor
yeah,
already.
I mean, one thing I like when I don't like when a lot of historical movies. I know they mean well when they do add they add in characters and go into the lives of the
Mhm.
characters behind the events in order to try and just add more to the movie.
Yeah.
I personally I'm not a fan of that at all. I think the way they did in this movie, where it just takes you with the characters in the events, the characters are
Mhm.
just there as a guide to the events, rather than the characters uh, just there to kind of add more to the movie, just because, in my opinion.
Yeah, very fair. And again, I do agree. Like in a lot of ways, it's just it's really just my subjective view. Like I really like it. Maybe it's just because I mean, a lot of the time in Christopher Nolan movies, you have just awesome characters. Like I mean, movies like The Prestige or all the Dark Knight movies, Interstellar. I mean, Memento especially. Those are all movies with outstanding characters. But the thing is, kind of like you were saying, like especially with say historical films where you're trying to portray the actual historical events and you got to be respectful. So don't just throw in characters and and put the focus on them instead of the important actual historical events, like in movies like Pearl Harbor. Uh, but wait, shoot, where was I? Oh, dag nabbit, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking
Again.
about you were talking about how um, dragging the focus away from the history and
Oh,
putting it on
oh,
the new characters.
I remember now. Okay, what I was gonna say, like that's, yeah, it's, or especially for historical films, but really just in general, like you said, like characters, um, um, and like creating good emotion with the characters isn't as important as other things. And I agree because really, while characters are very important to stories, like ridiculously important, they're fundamental most of the time, unless you're trying to make a nonlinear movie. The most important thing always is the story itself. And in Dunkirk, it was a very well told story. So for sure, it's still a really good movie, and I did enjoy it quite a lot. It's really intense, and it's just technically incredibly well made. It's a very well shot movie, predictably enough for Christopher Nolan. I mean, like just the color palette is beautiful. I mean, like they're great panning shots of the beachside and out. Just like when you see the sea foam drifting up into the beach, just something about that image. It was just such, I don't know, a weird word to use, I guess, but such luscious imagery. It's just incredibly visually rich. And the camera work could also get a little bit like up close and personal and shaky, like when the crab was going down. Like,
Hmm.
for instance, that one moment, and again, guys, we're going into spoilers, like when they're in the ship and then it gets hit with a torpedo and it
Yeah.
starts flooding. Like, I mean, also the sound design, it was really freaking loud in the movie in IMAX, and just the way the camera work showcased that event, it just put me there. That honestly is one of the most intense scenes I've seen in a movie, at least in theaters that I've seen. That was like one of the most. Dunkirk as a whole is one of the most suspenseful and intense movies that I've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
It's very much so a great thrill ride.
Yeah. Even though you already know what's going to happen, you
Yeah.
still feel very much in suspense, and that I think is one of the biggest things about a lot of historical movies. You just you just feel like it's just a textbook half the time. But
Yeah.
then movies like this that really just bring it to you, it's just it's just so refreshing and just amazing. It's like going from playing Pong to to playing VR War Thunder. That's
Yeah.
like how big of a difference, just about,
Mhm.
just to kind of give people an idea of, if they haven't watched too many historical movies, that would be a good analogy in my opinion. Don't What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't really have a whole lot to add there. I think you pretty much nailed it. But yeah, yeah, I agree.
Alright.
Yeah. So let's see. We've talked about the characters and the story and how the movie's historically accurate. I talked a little bit about the camera work and stuff. So what's anything else you want to add? Or actually, real quick, I want to talk about the music. The music was it was not abrasive at all. Like some people have complained in the past, or because Hans Zimmer did the music for this movie, and he does the music for most of Christopher Nolan's movies. Some people have complained for past movies that his music is too loud. Or you know how in a lot of movie trailers you have boom music playing, like whenever it's supposed to be something intense. Okay, that originated with Hans Zimmer. It's called the Hans Zimmer boom. That's what people originally call it. Like Inception. Inception really started it. Like every trailer copies the Inception trailer to this day, pretty much. But anyway, some people complain that his music is too loud and abrasive. I've always liked it, but in this movie especially, I think he dialed it back a notch. I mean, there are long stretches without hardly any music, but a lot of the time the music is a little bit more subtle. I mean, it could get pretty loud at times, just the same as the movie in general could get loud. Like the gunfire, the explosions was really loud, and I thought that thought that worked well for the impact of the movie, add to the intensity and the immersion. I felt like I was there at times. The IMAX helped with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but also I thought it was really pretty music, especially at the ending of the movie. I mean, first the cinematography in the last couple scenes in the movie pretty much is the most beautiful of the entire movie. Like after Tom Hardy lands that plane, and you see like the evening sunset on the beach. It's just, and then you see the plane on fire. Oh my gosh, like beautiful looking stuff. Great for a film geek like me, and the music accented that very well. Did you notice in the movie that they kept on using clock sound effects, like tick
Yeah.
tock, tick, tick? Yeah, that admittedly that did weird me out. I guess what they were just going for with that was like time is running out or
Yeah.
something. I also like in the very last scene of the movie, right before it cuts to black, it's like tick, 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 and then it stops, and then the movie ends. It's very similar to Christopher Nolan's previous movie, Interstellar. Hans Zimmer did the music for that as well. A lot of the time in that movie, you also hear a clock ticking. It's slower. It's more like tick, tick. It's like this second-hand clock, and
Mm-hmm.
that made more like. I mean, I guess it kind of works for Dunkirk. I guess they're saying time is running out and stuff like that or something. But I thought it felt a little bit more tacked on. I mean, it was kind of calling back to Interstellar how they did that. But in the movie Interstellar, time and how time is, for the characters in the movie, kind of this destructive force that's really working against them. Like they're trying to beat the clock, work against time. Like, I mean, I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen the movie Interstellar. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay. What do you think of it?
I thought it was pretty, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but I thought it was pretty. I thought it was pretty good when I went to go see it. Um, I I'll be honest, I don't remember a lot of it, but I thought it was pretty good when I saw it.
Fair enough. But basically, like how the clock, like the second hand ticking sound for the clock, really worked there because time just fundamentally is very heavily interwoven into the plot. And so it made sense there. But in Dunkirk, I thought it was, I don't know, I couldn't decide if it was interesting, just saying, again, like the time is running out. But even if that was what they're going for, that's more simplistic of an incorporation of that sound effect into the movie. Because in Interstellar, it really worked because it actually fits with the plot. And this is just like clock sound effects, just because. That's kind of how it felt to me at times. But I don't know. Overall, I think the music in this movie was really well done. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I
about
don't know.
the clock sound effects.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally just don't like the sound of it. Like, just as a sound, I'm just not a fan of it. But I mean, I thought it was fitting. Um, I thought it was very fitting, but I don't know. I just thought it was. not quite as tacked on as I think you were saying, but
Yeah.
just a little bit, just a little
I'm
bit.
just a little bit. I'm kind of conflicted about it. I can't
Yeah.
decide if it was a cool addition to the movie or just a weird way to call back to Interstellar, despite the fact that this movie is completely different from Interstellar, and time is not literally interwoven into the plot and the script like it is with Interstellar. It made sense there, so I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like actually, because they were definitely running out of time. I
Well,
think
yeah.
it
I mean,
was. I think it was, if not just. I thought it was just as fitting as in Interstellar, if not a little bit more fitting for this, because like the whole like the Germans are coming, the Germans are coming kind of deal. Um,
sure.
but yeah, I think it was just as fitting, if not more so. Um, although I thought we kind of got enough of that feeling as it was. So I mean, I
Yeah.
thought it was kind of I could take it or leave it, honestly.
It just like part of me feels like it was mildly pretentious, and part of me feels like they were just kind of using stock music from Interstellar a little, just like getting lazy. Like, oh, we did the clock thing before, let's do it again here. And yeah, even if that probably was what they were going for. Maybe a couple other things like time is running out, but that definitely does work, and that's what you feel in this movie.
Yeah.
The Germans are coming, the Germans are coming. That does kind of work, but even so, that's a lot more simplistic of an incorporation into the plot than it was in Interstellar. Because Interstellar time, like in more, not just because the time is running out in that movie, but also just because, like, they're traveling across space and time, and there's kind of sort of time travel elements in the movie thrown at the end. Spoiler alert, guys. I mean, I'm not even being really specific about that, but it fit better there. It kind of fits here, but it's a lot more loose of a connection, I think. But again, it's not a big deal really. It wasn't actually bothersome. It was just something that I was wondering, what other people would think about. Like, guys in the comments, like if you're big into movies and stuff like that, if you care about this type of stuff, just give me your thoughts if you thought the ticking of the clocks was an interesting incorporation in this movie Dunkirk. Me, I'm a little conflicted. I don't know.
Yeah,
It perplexed me a little bit, but it didn't bother me that much. I don't know why I'm going on for so long about it. It was just something I was kind of wondering about.
yeah.
Anyways,
I mean, for me, I'm in the middle. I'm just take it or leave it. So
yeah, fair enough.
that's the summary of my thoughts on it. But
Yeah,
as for uh, I actually did not see it in IMAX. I saw it in a regular theater. I think I was in like the fifth or sixth row from the front. But even
mhm.
so, it was just so immersive that it doesn't. I don't think it would really matter
Yeah.
where you sat in the theater. It's just that good, that immersive of a movie that I don't think it matters where you where you were.
Oh, I agree. Like seeing it at home on a TV would be awesome as well. I mean, it helps if you have surround sound and a flat screen TV and stuff like that. A decent sized TV, or going in to see it in theater. But it's just a great movie, and incredibly well made and really intense and immersive. So it works no matter the setting.
Yeah, I would definitely get it on DVD at some point.
Oh,
I mean, I
yeah,
think
this is
that's how
definitely
good it is.
yeah, it's definitely a movie I want to get on Blu-ray or DVD.
Yeah.
Um, or probably Blu-ray because my dad, whenever we buy DVDs, my dad's like, "What are you doing? Just get a Blu-ray. We have Blu-ray players. What's Blu-ray?" But the thing is, that's how it used to be. But the thing is, like now, I'm kind of used to that, so I'm kind of the same way. And whenever my mom gets a DVD, I'm like, "No, my gosh, be more like a millennial and just buy Blu-rays." No, but anyways, um, but yeah, I mean, especially with Christopher Nolan movies, because his movies have such good cinematography and direction. They're beautiful to look at on a consistent basis. They're especially good to see on Blu-ray, but they're good anyway, so it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. So,
But yeah,
um, going back to the audio, I think
sure.
that well, for one, my favorite scene for audio was hands down when the Stukas started coming, when they started bombing the piers and the ships and everything. That was just
Yep.
top notch.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like it really makes you feel like you're right there, and it makes you like because if you know about like the German technology and about the Stukas specifically, then you would know that they have the Jericho sirens on them, which their sole purpose is for psychological warfare, because that it purposely made them louder and sound like they're screaming as they're coming down, because you don't hear it so much when they're just flying straight, but when they actually dive, all the extra air, like the faster it goes, makes it spin louder. Everything inside it makes the Jericho siren louder and louder and louder the faster it goes down. So, I mean, just imagine being on the pier, stuck in like fish on the pier, like sardines, and then all of a sudden you hear the Stuka, which you've heard many, many times before, and have proven to be absolutely devastating to all of your comrades. And then you're standing there just packed in like sardines, unable to do anything about it. No anti-air, no nothing. Just hope you survive. Just imagine how scared they would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I thought was, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It. I actually saw this movie with my grandma and my dad, and there were a handful of times where my grandma plugged her ears watching the movie. Yeah, it was kind of. Yeah, the movie has great audio. It's visually stunning. I mean, in terms of audio, just the sound effects are great. I mean, right off the bat, the movie gets really intense. Because, I mean, I was kind of surprised that first scenes where they're walking through the town, and almost immediately gunfire starts going off, and I jumped. I was like, oh, crap, like, already? Dang. And I also was kind of surprised by this movie because, like, there's not really a lot of battle scenes. It's really just people them trying to get away from the enemy. It's more of a straight survival film. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, which is how Dunkirk, which was what Dunkirk was all about, just survival, trying to just stay alive. Which at that point was hard enough to do anyway, much less have any sort of victory. But about what you said about just the suddenness of it, that was pretty much what it was like, going from a desert to being dunked in an ice bath is basically how World War II happened. Well, what it felt like to a lot of people. I mean, of course, there was plenty of signs that A, either people ignored, or B, people just deluded themselves into thinking that it wasn't coming, that there was not going to be another World War.
Yeah.
But it is so obvious in hindsight, and to some people even back then. But the problem is, a lot of those people were either not in a position of power, or they were a minority. Well, I should say, and they were a minority of voices. But yeah, that's the suddenness of the movie. I think it fit perfectly with just the start of World War II, which is when Dunkirk happened. Because if you don't know geography, if you have Germany right here, and then France is about where my head is, Dunkirk is on the coast right about here, just off the border of Belgium, because Belgium's here, Netherlands, Germany, then France. Dunkirk is right on the edge of Belgium and France. So.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, I mean, I thought the movie did a really good job of being. It's one of the more grounded in reality, realistic war films that I've seen. And on that front, I was a little bit suspicious, of whether or not that would be the case, because the movie's PG-13.
Yeah.
And a lot of the great World War II films in recent memory, like, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan, Hacksaw Ridge, they're hard R ratings. You know, to try to sell the horror of war, it really helps to actually add the brutality. And I wasn't sure if they would be able to pull it off, but no, this movie is brutal. It's really intense. It's fairly realistic. And plus, I mean, while I love Hacksaw Ridge to death, I think that is a fantastic movie. It's one of the best war movies I've ever seen. But it was kind of exaggerated in terms of the violence, and it worked for the movie because, like, if you just show, like, even if you have, like, like, if you show real-life battle footage, like, you know, it's not actually, despite the fact that you're literally showing the real footage right there, it's not actually going to convey the intensity that you would feel if you were actually there. Like, you know, you can watch gunfights against, like, Taliban and stuff like that on YouTube, but you don't despite the fact that it's not just realistic, it is real, you don't actually feel the intensity just watching it.
It's because you're not actually there. So for
Exactly.
movies, you have to make it a little bit more
Yeah.
over the top than what it actually technically is.
Hmm.
But the reason, like, but the feeling you get from it is hard to convey because it's not. I don't want to say all in your head, but the feeling is inside the people in the moment, like
Yeah.
actually there in battle. But trying to actually convey that feeling would be so difficult
Yeah.
because
That's right.
it's, for one, it would be really hard to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it, and then not only to first explain it to someone that's trying to make a movie of it, but then for that person to then go and try and convey something that they themselves have not experienced is just really difficult. But they did an absolutely fantastic job in this movie, I would say.
Oh yeah, in spite of the lack of gore, or yeah, what I was saying, like about Hacksaw Ridge, it is kind of exaggerated, but it works because the movie did shock me. Like I was, it really pulled me in, and my jaw literally. I mean, this isn't a review for Hacksaw Ridge, but I mean, just saying, like when that first battle scene hit in Hacksaw Ridge, my, excuse me, my jaw dropped and stayed dropped for the entire scene. I was also only a few rows back from the front when I saw that movie, and it wasn't IMAX, but it was still a really good sound system. The movie did legitimately surprise me. It shocked me, just the same as Saving Private Ryan did when I first saw that. And so I was wondering if they would, with a PG-13 rating, be able to do something like that with Dunkirk. But yeah, I mean, this movie is still very intense, on the level with those movies a lot of the time. And because of the fact that the movie doesn't have over the top gore, in some ways it's actually more realistic. Like, I mean, really, the most realistic would be, kind of a balance in between. Like, say, a movie like Flags of Our Fathers. Like, that doesn't have extremely gratuitous blood spurting, but there are moments to where there's gore. That's more how it is. I mean, like when someone gets shot in the head with a pistol, it's not going to be like, blood it's their head isn't going to explode. It's more going to be like they hit the ground and then blood starts to seep out of their head, stuff like that. So it's kind of a balance in between something like Dunkirk and something like Saving Private Ryan or whatever, and kind of like Flag of the Fathers. But anyways, regardless of gore, Dunkirk is really intense. And also, what do you think of the aerial combat scenes? Because as far as I could tell, they were really realistic. I think they
Yeah.
actually used real planes during those scenes for some of the shots.
Yeah, I think they actually did.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the planes that are actually getting shot, I would assume, are not real planes.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
So.
I mean, prop to them if they actually did, but I seriously doubt they did.
Some pretty good stunt work there. Just literally flying a plane and someone just like, okay, buddy, we're gonna shoot the crap out of that plane. Wait, what?
Now, I could see them just having some sort of like miniature shaped charges on the sides of the planes that were kind of hidden, like explosive bolts on the plane that would just pop when they get hit at the right time. I could see them doing that, and then they just CGI land the plane or something.
Yeah.
I could
It
see
wasn't
them
all.
doing something like that.
There was definitely a lot of CGI, but it was great CGI. It looked real the vast majority of the time. But yeah, it was really cool when there were actual planes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a great detail. I mean, that's Christopher Nolan for you. He likes to do stuff practical and in camera.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's actually a lot of miniatures that were used for Interstellar. Like, it's not just CGI. A lot of the time, they actually use miniatures. So that was really cool for that movie. Didn't have to do that. Could have just easily just done all CG. That's what most everyone would do.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he likes to make his movies feel more organic and add, that touch of reality to it.
Yeah.
But I also liked in the aerial combat scenes, like whenever they fired, like the bullets actually looked like bullets look when you see them flying around in aerial combat videos from actual like World War II footage, and yeah, so that was a pretty cool detail. Felt a lot more real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like more about the aerial combat. I think they did a really good job conveying how, like, just the difficulty of it, because for one, most people can't fly a plane to begin with, and then not only flying planes, which at the time, because the Spitfire, what it actually showed, was when he went up, and then you saw like the puff of black smoke. I actually know the mechanics of the Spitfire a little bit, like why it did that and why it stalled, is because at the time the Spitfire, it did not have a sort of like fuel injector that modern planes have, and planes that some planes did even back then, that allowed it was all like the Spitfire at the time was it used gravity like trucks and land vehicles because they're
Yeah.
not meant to be flipping over and going all kinds of different like twists and turns. So it's fine to have it gravity fed, the fuel lines. But the Spitfire had that problem that when it would go straight up, the fuel line, all the fuel, the engine would not get any fuel when it went straight up. It'd be
Wow.
so that's why the puff of black smoke, because there's no fuel, and that's why the engine cut out. So that was a big problem with the Spitfires, but one that pilots at the time actually learned to use to their advantage after a little bit. What they would do is they would go, and then if they had someone on their tail, they would go straight up as quick as they can, just overpower the engine to get really, really high, and then just basically let their plane flop back over, and then gun the engine as they're going back down and shoot the enemy plane that was following them. It's risky because it leaves you completely open all the way up, but you can get a really good shot on the enemy if you manage to pull it off.
Yeah, it sounds like that would be really difficult to pull off.
Yeah. And if you can't get your engine restarted, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
But it's risky, but it's a very large risk and reward on both sides. But I mean, considering how big of a fault that was, I think they did really good using that to their advantage, and they also showed that fault of the Spitfire in the movie. And it also showed like how few Spitfires actually decent planes the British had at the time. The Spitfire was one of the few decent ones, because when World War II broke out, British were still using World War I biplanes. And I forgot who it was, but there was a British general that remarked, what was it? He said something about the British planes being like 10 years out of date, like when the war broke out, and they were designed the year before the war broke out.
Oh. Nice.
So it was something, I don't remember. Hopefully I can find it and then put it in the video or something. If not, you guys can try and find it yourself for all the viewers. Okay, got 13 minutes because YouTube does not like videos over an hour long.
That's true. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've talked about a decent amount. I mean,
yeah, we've pretty much covered a lot of stuff. Yeah. There's just a couple things I want to go over.
Okay, fair enough.
Is there anything you want to go over?
Oh, let's see. Hold on. Talk about cinematography, music. Oh yeah, actually, let's talk about the nonlinear structure of the movie, because I mean it plays things out of order. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Christopher, I was kind of surprised that the movie would do that, because Christopher Nolan has definitely done that plenty of times. Like in the beginning portions of Batman Begins, he does that. He does that in The Prestige. And he definitely did that in Memento. I mean, that movie is literally, it starts at the end and ends at the beginning. It's a backwards movie. Have you ever seen Memento?
No, I haven't. The only movie that I've seen that you've mentioned is Saving Private Ryan and Interstellar. I want to see Hacksaw Ridge, but I wasn't able to.
Hacksaw Ridge is so good, man. But yeah, it's he hasn't done that for a while. Like, he didn't do that with the Batman movies that he did. I mean, at the start of Batman Begins, for a while he did that, and then he kind of stopped. And The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises didn't do that. I mean, the ending of Interstellar kind of like goes back in time a little bit, but it's not really the same. And I was a little bit surprised that he would bring back that style for this movie. Because, I don't know, this is like a straightforward historical war film, and so I expected him to just have the events play out chronologically, kind of normal. I figured that he would do that type of, structure for, more sci-fi-esque movies, or just more stylized-esque movies in general, not like a realistic war film. But I think it worked, and the thing is, not only is it just an interesting way to structure a film, no matter how you slice it, and it made it a little bit difficult for me to follow at times, mainly because it caught me off guard. I was like, oh, he's doing this again. but after a while, I did get used to it. I thought it was interesting. It's always interesting how he incorporates that into some of his movies. But also, I saw the movie with my grandma, and she's like a very perceptive and clever individual like me. You know, she's kind of a movie geek like me, not quite in the same way. But she, you know, what she said, like when I brought that up, she's like, "Oh, I think it really helped add to the sense of chaos and confusion to the scenario." And I think that's a really good point. And so, especially because she said that, it really worked for me that he chose that editing style.
Yeah, that was actually something I was about to say after you were done talking. I was gonna go a little bit more into it, but like he didn't just go out of order, like some movies do, where it's just like jumping all over the place, just kind of seemingly at random, or whether it goes in reverse. He actually, because like later in the movie you realize everything is going on at the same time. You don't realize that at first, but then you quickly realize, wait, what? All of this is happening together? And like you especially start to realize it when you see the fishing, like the small craft, and like when the planes fly over, you see that, and then you realize you see it first from the boat, like from the small craft, and then you see it from the plane, and then you're like, wait, oh, and then you realize just how absurdly crazy everything was than it already was.
And it all just kind of culminates by the end of the movie. They like all the three different storylines, kind of, well, not three different storylines, but different aspects of the story just kind of converge. It was really interesting. So yeah, I overall, all things considered, I liked that they went that route, structuring the movie in that manner. You know?
Yeah, because I mean, it would be near impossible to try and structure it in a strictly linear fashion rather than showing all the different points of view. You would have to cut out like half the movie in order to show it in a completely straightforward fashion.
So it actually works a lot better this way.
I think this is actually one of the few movies where it fits better than you could do any other type.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but now you say it, yeah, the movie couldn't really work any other way. If anything, that's using that style was the most economical, intelligent way to conserve as much of the story as possible by going that route. So that's really interesting, actually.
And it's the most immersive, in my opinion, too.
Yeah. Again, yeah, like my grandma said, it makes it kind of adds to the chaos of the situation. I mean, we're just kind of all over the place,
Yeah, and one thing I saw, I mean, you see how there's the French troops, the British troops. You don't really see the German troops except in the plane. And then you see what was it, Danish guy? He was Danish, right?
Was he? Yeah, I think
so.
He
was Danish. I forgot. I'm pretty sure he was Danish, though. But anyway, that guy. You see how there's just so many different people that all come together in the face of a common threat. And it really kind of shows the human psyche, and how, and just how weird things can be, because the French and the English have hated each other for who even knows how long, but centuries, thousands of years. I mean, they've hated each other, and then first in World War I they worked together, and then now you see in World War II. You just get a sense of how, for one, I want to point out fickle humanity is and their opinions and thoughts and everything, and then also how strong they are. Like, because they can come together and get over what they can overcome together. Sometimes when they need to, and then other times they're completely fickle and just completely break down because of that. It kind of just gives you a sense of that sort of tongue twisters subconsciously. But
yeah, I agree. It's really interesting how they pulled off this movie. I mean, yeah, for sure, as I keep saying, it's definitely an incredibly well-crafted movie. It's well-written. It's an interesting structure for the plots. And, yeah, it's an interesting return to form for Christopher Nolan because, as I said, he's done this in the past. And it was actually surprising. I didn't expect him to bring back that style for this movie. But yeah, like I realize now, like now that we've actually talked about this, it works even better than I already thought it did. You know, very well shot movie. It's beautiful to look at, beautiful to listen to as well. Despite the fact there's not a whole lot of actual character development and backstory, the characters, for the most part, you're along the ride for them, and you still sympathize with them, and you want to see them get out of it. And the acting is really good. It's just freaking intense. The special effects are very impressive. There's a lot of great actual practical use of actual pyrotechnics, and they used real planes. It's fairly grounded in reality and historically accurate. You know, the more I think about it, the more I like the movie.
Yeah.
And well, yeah.
Um,
Anything else to cover?
just back to the characters for 1 second, and then we're gonna have to end the video because 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
about the characters, it should I kind of already said this about the fickleness, and also at times it can be the strength of humanity.
Yeah.
But it just shows how different everyone is and how little everyone knew of each other. But they were both forced and chose to work together at the same time. It's a weird mix of choice and being quote unquote forced to work together in order to achieve the desired goal, which in this case was to simply survive, and for much of the war was just to simply survive. So yeah, I thought this was, and as we've talked about, the audio especially was, in my opinion at least, was the #1 thing about the entire movie. The audio just really brought
I would
all
agree
the
with that.
scene.
I would agree with that. That really added to the intensity. I mean, I was legitimately like frightened and like really on the edge of my seat during this movie.
Yeah, especially the Stuka scene with the Stukas coming down, the Jericho sirens. That was absolutely bone chilling, especially if you've never heard it before. And I've heard it plenty of times, and just again, oh man, it was insane.
Absolutely, yeah, very well done.
Yeah, I think like not only did it enhance the movie, but it tied everything together and just immersed you in. It did everything right. That I think the audio did everything right that you can do in a movie with audio.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely a major plus for this movie. But there are plenty of other pluses, as well that we've talked about in this video. Yeah, very good movie. I mean, like in my rating scale, that I use a letter grade scale on my YouTube reviews, and for me, just because I couldn't latch onto the characters as much as I wanted to, or at least as much as I have for past Christopher Nolan films, for me it's a B plus. It's a very good movie, even though technically I acknowledge that really it's deserving of an A, if not an outright A plus, because really I do acknowledge that this is a great film. It's incredibly well done. Like really, yeah, honestly, it's extremely well crafted. Probably an A plus movie, really. Like pretty spot on, 10 out of 10 war film. But for my enjoyment, it's more of a B plus. But still, very very good movie.
Yeah, since I've never done movie reviews, I don't have a system for that, but I probably ought to make one. But I would definitely give it like on a number scale 1 to 100 of like a 95 or so for like 90 to 95 for both enjoyment on a personal level and for the movie itself, like technically.
Yeah, like craft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like rating systems aren't that big of a deal. Really, they are very arbitrary. But I just like to include them because I'm kind of OCD like that. I just like them. I don't care if they're technically kind of pointless. I just do them anyway. That's just me.
It's just nice to have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just me. But yeah, so I guess that pretty much settles it, guys. Well, I mean, I guess you can do the outro because it's your video, or I mean your channel.
Yeah. I mean, I just want one last thing.
Oh.
I just want to say that this is one of the very few movies that I can honestly say there's not a whole lot I can say that they did wrong or that they did badly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me to talk about it. I think it was pretty interesting.
Hello. I was interrupted, unfortunately, during the outro, and it just didn't turn out too well. So I decided to edit that out and just put in this intro. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, click the like button. If you enjoy my content in general, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And if you have any comments, suggestions, gripes, whatever, just go ahead and put it in the comment section down below. And as always, have a great day, and the Emperor protects.